Well, good evening and welcome to Real People, Real Voices. I'm your host, James Jackson.
I'm your co-host, Pastor Wayne Moore.
Always a pleasure to host with you.
It is. You're looking great today, my friend.
Thank you. Likewise. Our shirts kind of match.
Yeah, you know, I hear that all over the city that we have tendency to match colors together.
Well, it's going to be a great show on today.
It is. We're going to have a great guest with us today. Plus, we have great sponsors with us today.
Yep, Lee, Castle, and Crowley.
Yes, and we also have the Stewart Mortuary, who's alive and well and doing what they can to help us in hours of bereavement. We also have the
Fervent Care, Child Care, and Christian Academy.
Yes, a great school, place to get your children started. Has great accommodations for young people.
Yeah, choose Christian schools and daycares. They're all closer to Christ. And we certainly want to thank Pryors.
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, I had a group of men in here. We'll talk about those fellas later. They had a great meal today. I watched them. They
very enjoyable.
Exercised themselves very well today on Pryors.
Yeah. And so we want you to enjoy this meal that we have prepared for you today. It's going to be a great show, a lot of information to share with you. We also want to encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, subscribe so you can watch this show when it's over and perhaps others that you might have missed. Also like us on Facebook.
Yes, like us on Facebook. And remember, not only that, there's a series of shows that are on YouTube from the very beginning, our inception, even up until now. You can catch us on YouTube. Yeah,
a lot of good information. Also want to make sure on Friday nights at 9:30, you tune in, and certainly on Sundays at 5:30. It's going to be a great show on today. The Honorable Representative Cherrish Pryors with us today.
Yes, and she's going to share with us her agenda for what's going on in the legislation. And we're going to listen to what she has to say, and hopefully it'll help the community.
Yeah, so stay tuned. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices. I want to dive right into getting our guest on, the Honorable Representative Cherrish Pryor. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you.
Good to have you, Representative Pryor.
I'm excited to be here on your show today.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming by.
And also, you're chair of the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus.
Correct, yes. I have been chair of the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus since 2017. I'm very honored that my colleagues elected me to serve in that capacity.
Well, congratulations. I think they made a good selection. Tell us those two responsibilities in summary, because there's perhaps a lot of people who are watching, they don't know what you do with regard to being a state representative, and also your responsibility with regard to being a chair of the Black Legislative Caucus.
Well, my responsibility as a state legislator is to pass laws for people in the state of Indiana. And so that is something that I enjoy doing. An opportunity to help individuals is always something that's important to me. And as chair of the Black Caucus, the members of the caucus is 14 members. You can only be a member of the Black Caucus, Indiana Black Legislative Caucus, if you're a member of the legislature. And we have 14 members around the state. We have the majority of our members here in Indianapolis, actually, and then we have a great contingency in Lake County, and we're going to be adding an additional person, hopefully in November, to the caucus as well. So we'll move from 14 to 15 people, which is a good thing, and we also have a member that's in South Bend, Indiana as well.
And you just finished your tour.
Yes, yes, we did.
Tell us about what happened on your tour.
We, 3 years ago, we decided to do town hall meetings around the state of Indiana. We decided that and realized that we needed to take the State House to the people. And so as a way to do that, we conducted town hall meetings, and we conducted 6 this year. We started out in Indianapolis and ended in Evansville. One thing that we wanted to do was to provide people with information on what happened during the legislative session. We passed all kinds of laws. We passed the $30 billion state budget, and we want people to know what we do there at the State House, because you get information from the media, but sometimes it's not all the information that you're getting, particularly to the African American community and some of those smaller places that don't have African American legislators. So we decided to go on the road, to let them know what we were doing, but also to get feedback from individuals about what's happening and what they feel is important that we need to be focusing on as a legislative body as well.
What is going on with health care? Can you help the central hearers and listeners know what's going on with health care?
And I think more specifically, the HIP 2.0.
The HIP 2.0.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That it has been an issue that the Black Caucus has been focusing on. We joined the coalition of individuals to request of the governor to not move forward on a requirement where people would have to work in order to get HIP. Healthcare is critical for people. If you're not healthy, you can't even hold down a job.
Right.
And so to put in a workforce requirement with some exemptions, however, Family and Social Services will be the agency that will be administering it. There's been challenges with Family and Social Services agency for years.
Yes.
Their denial rate for SNAP incorrectly is 50%. So here's a program where they've had for years and they can't get that right. But now you're going to have a requirement for people to work to get health care. And that is the dire situation.
And some people who are already on HIP 2.0 cannot work.
Correct. People
so
who are disabled,
take their insurance. Yeah.
They potentially take their, I think people who are disabled, there's an exemption from them.
Right.
But I'm sure you have to get qualified for that as well. Right. So if they deny you incorrectly, you're without your health insurance until they make a determination.
Right.
And then, but they don't even have all those processes in place. They haven't even done a survey of the members who are currently on HIP to determine what things they need to get over some of those obstacles just to get a job.
Well, it's good to have you there to ask those questions. You know, because sometimes when we get into these type of situations, there's nobody to ask the questions, and it's good to have a Cherrish Pryor there to ask those questions, and people are going to be wanting to have answers to that.
Well, thank you.
And so we're happy that you're there to do that, and we know that you have always communicated with the community in instances like this, and we appreciate that.
Thank
but
you.
There's a lot of people who's going to be suffering.
There are a lot
happens.
of people. There are a lot of people, and I think, you know, when we met with them, the one thing that I mentioned was there are oftentimes unintended consequences when you don't do things the right way. Mm-hmm. This is not a situation in which we can have unintended consequences, because if you're an individual who have diabetes and you're no longer able to get your medicine, what happens to that individual? You can't bring those people back. If something drastic happens to them. And then someone is going to have to pay that cost. If people don't have health care insurance, they're going to show up in the emergency room. So who's going to pay that? Mm-hmm. You know, so it's creating a situation, trying to solve an answer to a question that hasn't even been asked or need to have been asked in the first place. And that's really unfortunate that we're in a time in which some of our most vulnerable people who wanted health care, who signed up for health care, will no longer have it simply because someone decided that there needs to be a work requirement. It's very unfortunate.
So in the time we have left in this segment, Representative, what can people do to help advocate for keeping it as it is and not going down that road?
Not going backwards.
The best thing that people can do is call the governor's office, call Family and Social Services Administration, and call their legislator, their state representative and state senator, and let them know they don't support that requirement. And not just people who are disabled or caregivers, but if you know somebody, or even if you don't know anybody, call them and let them know your concern. If they don't hear, it's great to hear from us as legislators, but oftentimes the needle gets moved when people who are not elected officials make those phone calls. You know, and that's very critical. We're going to be there as a Black Caucus, fighting against this along with the coalition.
And you're going to create a greater noise than you already have. Yes,
we have not made a lot of noise about it yet. That's something that we're definitely are going to have to do and get people more educated about it. But you know, people need to make those phone calls as well. You know, we can pound the pavement all day, but we want to make sure that we have those people who are behind us, holding us up and pushing us forward and challenging us and making sure that we're fighting, you know, until the end. Whether we're successful or not, we got to keep up the fight, and part of that is having the people support us in that effort.
All right, well, we got much more coming from Representative Cherrish Pryor. Stay with us. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices. We're joined today by Representative Cherrish Pryor. And Dr. Moore, in the last segment, Representative Pryor was talking about the fact how important it is for people to get involved. Advocacy is so important. And Representative, I think you see it more so than a lot of people do because you're at the State House. What are you seeing with regard to advocacy on different things that come up?
As far as people showing up at the State House, we see a lot of lobbyists that show up at the State House. We don't see a lot of everyday people coming in to tell their story. And what I have found is those stories are the most powerful stories. So advocating not only in calling and writing letters, but showing up when there's a committee meeting, that is just as powerful because people have taken their time to come and put forth the effort to express themselves and inform us and allow us an opportunity to ask questions. Oftentimes, that form of advocacy is more informative than a lobbyist being there because they have limited information. So just individuals showing up. I know that it's oftentimes a challenge because we meet during the day. A lot of people work during the day, so that's a challenge for people. And security, and then you know you have to go through security. They have security. They have security at the State House, not the schools. Not a lot of schools don't have security, but we have them at the State House.
They will have security in the future, though. The schools.
They are, but it's been a long time coming and a long fight.
Depends on where it happens.
Exactly.
Just have to be real about it.
You're exactly right. It depending on where it happens determines how important it is.
Right.
So some of the important bills, in your estimation, that didn't pass?
Some of the important bills that did not pass, the hate crimes legislation, which is something that we've been working on for years, did not pass. And the ironic thing about the hate crimes legislation is that generally you get a little bit closer each year you introduce a bill. The opposite has happened with hate crimes legislation. 3 years ago when it was introduced, it had a vote in the Senate, but the chairman in the House decided not to hear the bill. Very unfortunate. The second year it got out of committee, but there was no vote in the Senate, and this year it didn't get a hearing at all. So instead of us moving closer to passage of that important piece of legislation, it's been kind of stalled. Another important piece of legislation is racial profiling. I've introduced that bill for several years, and that has not gotten a hearing. On the health care front, we had a piece of legislation that would have increased the age to purchase cigarettes to 21, and that did not pass either. It passed out of committee, and the Speaker decided to recommit that to Ways and Means, which is another form of making sure that that piece of legislation
does not get heard again.
So, and that was really unfortunate. So those are some really important things that did not pass. During the regular session, we did have a bill dealing with school safety that did not get passed, but we came back during special session and eventually passed that. So we did get a school safety bill passed.
So is there anything coming up, bills coming up that people need to look out for in the future?
I think some of the bills that died There were bad bills, for instance, the bill that we had, the legalized loan shark bill that would have allowed people or companies and businesses to give out loans for 222% interest rate.
It deserved to die, didn't it?
It deserved to die. It passed the House. It didn't get a hearing in the Senate, but
It passed the House.
Passed the House.
Yeah.
I voted against it,
Yeah.
and there were a lot of people that voted against it. But thankfully, the Senate decided that that was just a horrible thing for people. But it's very likely that
It'll show up again?
that will show up again. So
And would that be something that those check cashing places lobby for?
that would be.
And they talk to their representatives and legislators, and they put those bills together to present to you all.
Yeah, they do. And, and they'll come and they'll talk to me and they'll ask me if I will support it, and I'll tell them no. And when you're lobbying or if you want something passed, you need to know, the magic number is how you have to count. I always tell people whether you're running for office or you have a piece of legislation, you need to know how to count. You need 51 votes in the House, 26 in the Senate, and the governor's signature.
Right.
So you have to know how to count. So they'll come and ask for the vote, but that is a piece of legislation that nobody in the Black Caucus is interested in supporting.
And most of those check cashing places are in Center Township.
They are in our community,
Yeah,
or
in certain
even our community, even if
I
it's
don't know
not
why
in
we're
Center.
afraid to talk about where certain things are. I mean, they are in our community.
They are, yeah.
Let me just say our community, Afro-American community.
They're in the black community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my district, not Center Township, but they're in my district.
Yeah, I said center to be safe, since we're real people, real voices.
Yeah.
But they're in the black community heavy.
Heavily.
I didn't see any on
pawn shops.
my way north here today. Yeah, in pawn shops and things of that nature.
But you might see some people from these areas,
Right.
down in those areas,
Right.
Yeah.
getting those loans.
Yeah.
So maybe some of them own some of the places as
Right.
well.
And it's fine, but I'm just basically saying that there are just certain bills that, the Black Caucus can challenge and do a good job in challenging, but they can't win. Because they're out and always, like you say, you have to learn how to count. And when you count at the Capitol building,
Yeah.
there's just not enough.
It's not enough, but the one thing that I think, the one good thing about having us there is at least we can be vocal and stand up on the floor and state our opposition. And hopefully, hope and pray that someone on the other side will listen and have an understanding. The one thing that I always tell people, nothing happens in silos. And what I mean by that is, if it's happening in my community, eventually it's going to happen in your community as well. And so why not try to address the issue when we bring it forward so that you don't have to deal with it?
It is my prayer that you will continue with HIP 2.0, because January is going to be a deadline for it.
Yeah.
And that you as a legislator will make sure that people in the community know that their health care is being jeopardized. And they're going to go and get a prescription and find out they can't get it anymore. So that's something that I personally am going to get out and share with the community, because we all have relatives who are experiencing that particular situation, and we'll experience that particular situation if it is not stopped. And
We will.
Yeah.
The one thing that I think is important to keep in mind is that in some states that are moving forward with this requirement.
7 states so far.
Yeah. And in Ohio, I think in Michigan, they have a exemption for counties that have a high unemployment rate. And that is to make sure that communities that are not of color are not affected negatively by this work requirement. I can guarantee you, if something were like that were to be implemented in Indiana, the communities in which we have a big representation, we probably won't have that exemption. So, Marion County wouldn't, Lake County, Allen County, and so we cannot allow things like that divide us in making sure that this is not something that happens for anybody, regardless of the county that you live in.
You've been a great guest.
You have.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today.
I always enjoy being with y'all.
Thank you.
Likewise. And thank you all for joining us. We'll be back with the rundown after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices. We're glad you're back. And I'm James Jackson, your host.
I'm your co-host, Pastor Wayne Moore.
And I'm Faith McKinney, your executive producer.
What a great segment with Representative Pryor.
She's done an outstanding job. I think she gave us some pertinent information that will resonate throughout the community. And I hope we can make Central Indiana very much aware of HIPAA 2.0 and let them know that we are on the brink of a healthcare crisis in our state.
Yeah, people have to get involved.
Absolutely. I had no idea until you, Pastor Moore, told me. I said, wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
People have to get involved. They have to advocate. In fact, there might be a lot of you all who have Facebook accounts. And if you have a Facebook account, you can go to the town hall on the left. And if you click on the town hall, it will reveal to you all of your representatives from the federal level all the way down to the local level. And it will allow you to inbox them and or send them emails.
That's right. That's right. And I want our communities to know that we cannot let some of these issues just rest with public officials and public service and legislators. We're going to have to get out because there are a lot of people who are in those positions.
And people are going to die.
Yeah, people are going to die behind this. And there are a lot of people who are in elected offices that are not doing what they need to do to make sure that the community is very much aware of this. And the only way that that can be reversed is that we get out ourselves and make sure the community knows and make the community aware of those type of people who are not bringing this information to the community.
Yeah, they're not talking about this at the state conventions for the parties. They're not talking about this, so
no, they're not talking about issues. They're talking about slates and who to keep off a slate and who to put on a slate, but they never make those conventions make the ideology, not the ideology, but the issue pertinent in the convention.
Yeah, politics is big business, and it should be about the people's business, which we certainly want you to stay involved in if you're involved.
Right.
And if not, since a lot of people spend a lot of time on Facebook, please be sure to click on the town hall and find out who your representatives are. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Real People, Real Voices.